I unmuted myself. All right, here we go. Good morning, good evening, everybody. I am just going to be sharing my screen because I've got the PowerPoint up and I am recording so that we can just gonna bring this back. Oh, here we go. Just need to mute everyone. Cool. Right. Sweet. All righty. Well, I'm going to start sharing my screen and get into it. I haven't really timed myself, so hopefully I won't go over or rush too much, but I'll also send the PowerPoint slides as well. Just going to share my screen here. Share. All right. Here we go. It's been a while since I've used Zoom. Now I have everybody muted, but I think there's one person. Yeah, there we go. I can mute everybody. All right. Nervous System 101. Woohoo, here we go. So hopefully this isn't too nerdy and sciencey. I tried to bring a little bit of fun into it. Come on, technology. Here we go. Alrighty. Gonna minimize that. And all right. Nervous System 101. Here we go. So if you stay till the end, I am giving away my Mindful Method 4-week starter course for those of you who would like that. I'll be sending that through. And things that we'll be going over today, hopefully that you'll leave with a little bit more confidence to learn about the nervous system. We'll learn what the nervous system is, how it processes your stress. So that's probably going to be the most important factor about our nervous system, is that it processes our stress. Why our perception of stress is way more important than the actual facts. 6 most powerful ways to regulate your nervous system. And why mindfulness is always key to all of this. Answers to any of your resistance, some questions as well. And my personal mindful method to regulation every day. So just because you learn how to regulate your nervous system one day doesn't mean that you don't need to do it any other day. So it definitely is something that we have to do daily. It's like brushing our teeth. It's a daily hygiene. Now, the nervous system is our brain. It consists of our brain, our spine, and our nerves, which is basically everything. And without it, we could do nothing. So it is constantly surveillancing everything in every room that we go into. So it can recognize threats and dangers. It will process information. It sends information from our body up to our brain and then from our brain back down to the body very quickly. It's very efficient. But again, one of our most important parts of our nervous system, which is due to our stress response, is that it regulates our physiological and our emotional response. So this is how we deal with stress, how we respond to it. But it also regulates our organs, our muscles, our breathing, our hormones, our glands, our reproduction, and our digestive. But one thing to remember about the nervous system, that it is always trying to keep you safe. Its job is not to keep you happy, it's to keep you safe. This is why the stress response, we'll get into it a bit later, is a big key factor, because it's always trying to keep us safe. And if it doesn't feel safe, it's putting off that alarm and the stress factor. All right, so this is kind of the big complex diagram of the nervous system. So it is quite large. There is a lot to it. But really today, what we're going to be going over, and what you may have heard a lot about, is the autonomic nervous system, because this is our stress response. And this is what is making us sick, really. this chronic stress that we all tend to have or tend to go to or feel very often in this day and age. But basically, the nervous system is broken down into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. You've got the sensory and the motor. So that's where the sensory comes in, goes up to the brain and the spine, gets the messages, goes back down, and then sends our response. So what we're going to be going over a lot today is the autonomic nervous system, and particularly the parasympathetic and the sympathetic branch, which makes up your autonomic nervous system. And we'll get into that as well. But basically, your autonomic nervous system is in charge of your breathing, your respiration, your body temperature, your digestion, your sexual arousal, your defecation, which is your poop, which I think we all need to be talking about that a lot more, because that is going to definitely tell you what's going on in the body and the brain. Your heart rate, your blood pressure, your emotions, your choices, and your actions. So this stuff is happening involuntarily. So it's happening very quickly when we get messages from the body. And just a little bit about me before we go dive deeper into today. I have recently released my debut memoir, Trust of Flames, my wild ride from mindlessness to mindfulness. I'm also a yoga meditation teacher. I host retreats, and I also do Reiki healings. Most of my life, I was consumed by a very dysregulated nervous system. I had big T and little t, which is trauma, lots of digestive issues, suffered from anxiety, depression, and addiction. And my baseline was dysregulation until I learned about the nervous system and learned how to regulate it. So when I am in a dysregulated state, I'm aware, and then I can bring it back to regulation. Not always, not quickly, all the time. I'm not perfect. I am human, but I've learned how to do it much better than I used to. So now I can say with confidence that these mindful methods I'm going to share with you definitely do work. But I would say you have to be consistent, like anything in life. And some of the stuff I'm going to be going over, I'm going to be brushing over a few things, because a lot of this is in my Mindful Method 12-week program, which I'm going to be launching in May. It's been a few years since I've launched it, but I'm going to relaunch it. And yeah. So stress, we know that stress is a silent killer. It is 90% of all illnesses and disease is stress related. Now, there was a study done with about 30,000 people over an 8-year span, and they asked the people if they had high levels of stress or low levels of stress. And I just have somebody so sorry, I have 2 people coming in. Here we go. Awesome. I think everybody should be muted. Sweet. They asked the participants, and I've had this on my Instagram, but they asked the participants if they had high levels of stress or low levels of stress, and then if they thought that stress was bad for them. So over the 8-year period, they looked at the death records, and the people, surprise, surprise, with high levels of stress and thought that the stress was bad for them, had the highest rate of mortality. I think it was 43% more of a chance of dying if you had high stress and you thought that the stress was bad for you. Now, the people who had the lowest mortality rate were people who had high levels of stress, but didn't necessarily think the stress was bad for them. This was much less than people who claimed to have had low levels of stress. So this study actually shows that our perception of stress, our perception of situations, have a much bigger effect on us than the actual facts. Now, I'm not dumbing down anybody's stressful situations or life. I'm not dismissing that we will all have things that come in that are very stressful and are a lot, but I didn't go over it here, but I think I want to even just do a webinar on stress and how we have so many micro stressors on a day-to-day basis that are probably all building up and making you more stressed. It's actually not the bigger things that we think about. It's probably more of the smaller things through day-to-day. But basically, our perception is not facts. The story and the thoughts in our head, we have about 70,000 a day. It's a lot. So this is going to weigh up more than facts, and it's going to fuel your response. Now, your perception is based on your past. So this is kind of hardwired in at a very young age, which is not something I'm going to go into today. But again, this is stuff that I go into the mindful method. But our response as adults, we think are very conscious, we think are very things that we've picked up recently, but they're things that we've picked up way down the track when we were kids. And things even, especially I talk about a lot in the mindful method, the words that we use to describe people and situations, the words that we use, period, are extremely powerful, and they tell the brain things. Like when we use the word need, we're actually sending a signal to our brain saying, whatever I say I need, if I don't get, I'm going to be stressed because I feel like if I don't get it, I will die. Sounds crazy, but that's how the brain works. Remember, it's not there to make you happy. It's there to keep you safe. So when you say you need something, you're telling your body that if you don't get it, you're not going to be safe. So just be careful and be mindful of the words that you use. It's also meaning that we give situations. It's also our beliefs that reinforce the world around us. So know that mindfulness is a way for us to learn what our perception is, so that maybe we can start to change our mindset, our beliefs, and our perception around certain things. This is why mindfulness helps all situations, because with awareness and understanding, we can see and make action that feeds our body more calm instead of stress. We can shift our states much quicker, much more efficient, and we can change our baseline. We can learn how to regulate our emotions so we don't feel stuck and overwhelmed. You have tools to use when you learn these mindful methods. And this also means that you can take on greater challenges and expand your growth for healing. And, you know, as they say on Instagram, living your best life. So again, going back to the nervous system, we're just going to focus on the autonomic nervous system. We really don't need to, we don't need to go into the brain and the spine. We kind of know what they do. But this is basically a very easy diagram to see the differences of your autonomic nervous system. So you've got your parasympathetic and your sympathetic. Your parasympathetic nervous system is where you are rested, your food is being digested, you're healing your body. This isn't always sleep. People think when they're sleeping, they're always in a parasympathetic state, and that's not true. Just because you're sleeping doesn't mean you're actually relaxed and calm and regulating. Now, your sympathetic nervous system is what gets activated when you feel stressed. So as you can see here, this is what happens. Your pupils will dilate, your lungs actually start to relax so that you can get more air in, because it's actually preparing you to run and to survive. So you actually get deeper breaths in. That's why you might feel like you can breathe a little bit deeper when you get activated, but it will increase your heart rate. It also slows down your digestion. This is not good. It stimulates glucose, which is the release of sugar. Again, diabetes, very, very diabetes 2, which is not genetic, it's lifestyle, and has a lot to do with chronic stress, because it stimulates that glucose that gets dumped into the bloodstream. As well as, I don't have it on here, but one of the biggest things is that it dumps adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream, which is extremely bad to have dumped into your bloodstream chronically. Oh, there it is, adrenaline production. And this also reduces your blood flow, which is bad for circulation. All of this obviously is stuff that we don't want to be living in constantly. This, when our body is constantly in a sympathetic state, we are not healing the body. Obviously, we don't want to always be in parasympathetic. I think sympathetic sometimes gets a bad rap. We do want to have a little bit of sympathetic nervous system activation. That's actually a good thing. But we also want to learn how to live in this and learn how to go from this to that, to that, to that quickly and more efficiently. So how does we're already halfway in, kind of trying to run through these. So how does the information kind of process in your body? So the information is going to come in from your senses. So we just think of the five senses, right? Well, your senses are a lot more than just seeing. It's actually how bright or how dark the light is, right? It's not just what somebody says, it's their body language, it's their tone of voice. It's not just what you see, but it's your perception of it. It's also your intuition, and thoughts are actually a sense as well. So it's not just the five senses. There's a lot more going on from the information coming in. Then that information is then sent up to your brain for processing. It's going to go back to your memory of your past, and it's going to say, is this safe or is this not safe based on what my past experiences were? Then based on that, it's going to send a message back down to your body, and that's how you're going to respond. Now, if your body is saying this is a safe environment, this is all good, you're going to probably stay in that parasympathetic. Now, if you go into sympathetic, your stressful state, your body will feel triggered, and it will go into 4 different types of response. Most of you have probably heard of your fight or flight, which is pretty self-explanatory. Now, your fight is where you get angry and you want to, physically fight. You want to say loud things. You want to maybe, be nasty. Your flight is when you want to leave. You just want to get away. So you want to flee. Now, I'm not going to go into the polyvagal theory today, but it's a huge part of the nervous system, but it's also kind of a new theory, which I go into a lot more in my mindful method 4-week thing. 12-week program. It is in the 4-week program. Actually, it's in my module 2 in the neuroscience. But basically, our body can also go into a freeze state where we actually can't talk, don't want to talk, and we feel stuck. And it can go into a fawn state, which this is where we start to people please, and we try to, make the situation around us better by pleasing others and things. Like I said, we're not going to go into the polyvagal theory, but it is a huge part of the nervous system, and one that I'm very passionate about. And I believe that it is a lot more in depth than just your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. This is just parts from module 2 in the neuroscience. But things that we can do when we are in these states. So what you can do to help your body re-regulate and to unlearn the not so great responses. So obviously we're never going to be 100% and never be in a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn state. Like, this will eventually happen to us. We will eventually get triggered, right? That's what happens. It's life. But what we can do is, when we become aware that we're triggered, is that we can do the opposite. That's how we train our body and our brain to be more mindful and to actually act differently. So we actually change the neural pathways and we start to change behavior, and that gets hardwired. So if our automatic response is fight, which mine usually is, I want to kind of say something back or, whatever, instead of saying something or going into the fight mode, see if you can pause, see if you can listen, see if you can not talk. If your automatic response is to flee, flee, same thing. Instead of leaving, try to stay. Don't leave. This might be really hard, but again, it's all about trying new things. So sometimes I go into this one a lot, where I just kind of shut down and I don't want to say anything and I kind of freeze. Instead of freezing, say something. It may not sound, how you want it to sound, but this is where practice comes in. We have to start where we're at. And sometimes if we're in that freeze state and we say something, we might be like, oh no, why did I say that? That's not what I meant to say. Then say that. So say whatever is on your mind. That's what being authentic is, right? So it may not be what somebody else wants to hear, but that's at least what's going on, and you can be more open and vulnerable and transparent. And then through time, your emotional language, you'll get way better at expressing yourself, but you can't do that without trying. And you have to start where you're at. And I think so many of us don't start because we feel like we have to be perfect. And we feel like we have to have the best answer to everything. We have to be so emotionally intelligent when we're in a, a fight with someone, or, an argument or a disagreement or a heated moment. Like, that's not the reality of life. So start where you're at and do something different. Do the opposite. Now, if you're somebody who people pleases, that's, there's no shame around these things. I've done all of these many times, still do. But instead of trying to people please, again, see if you can say nothing at all and just observe, to sit back and listen and to see if you can say nothing. So this, again, is just a kind of overview of how the nervous system will feel when you're in these states. So the parasympathetic is when you're feeling flow, you're feeling relaxed, you're curious, you're willing to be intimate, you feel safe, you feel capable, your food is able to be digested, you feel empathy, you have access to joy and love, right? We know what these states feel like. But we also know what a sympathetic state feels like. And this is when our stress response is kind of in that fight or flight, when we're ready to get up and run, or we feel chaotic, we feel shaky, we feel confused, we feel overwhelmed, agitated, irritated, thoughts like, I feel like I'm crazy, or the world is unsafe. Like, we've all been there. We all get there probably on a daily basis at some point for some reason. But again, it's not about never being in these states. It's about recognizing when we're in these states and then learning how to transition. Now, I'm not going to go over this too much, but I am going to mention it because it is very important. But in polyvagal theory, there's also the dorsal state. This is where we freeze or fawn. So we go into that lethargic, we're unable to move sometimes, not always, that's kind of an extreme, but things might feel a little bit fuzzy. We might feel lonely. We might feel a lot of shame or hopelessness. You feel stuck. You don't know what to do, etc. Now, this is the ladder of your nervous system. So as I mentioned before, the parasympathetic, or what's called ventral in the polyvagal theory, is where we feel safe. We're socially engaged, blah, blah, blah. The sympathetic is we're a little bit immobilized. So we're agitating and we're frantic. And down here is where we're in that dorsal state. So we're a little bit numb and we're collapsed or shut down. And now the whole point of regulating your nervous system is not always just standing on top of the ladder and being in your ventral parasympathetic nervous system. It's not possible, and it's not what we want to aim for. The whole point to regulate your nervous system is being able to move up and down the ladder easily and quickly. Now, you can't do that without practicing. So this is why I'm going to share more tips with you. What I find to be the 6 most powerful ways to regulate personally my nervous system is, number 1, mindfulness and meditation, because without mindfulness, all of the other ones down below are very hard to do. You cannot do any of them without being mindful. And meditation, obviously, is a very large part of my life. I've had a practice, I think, daily for almost 8 or 9 years now. And to me, it's like brushing my teeth. I have to do it every single day. I would recommend picking it up if it's something that you can do, but obviously everybody's different. This is why I love mindfulness, because you don't have to set time aside. You can do it every day, and it is very beneficial. Movement and exercise. We know that exercise is so important. I recently just hired a personal trainer this year, and it is the best money I've ever spent. Yes, I know how to work out and do classes, but there's something about, having accountability, someone who is a professional to there's just so much worth into spending money where you know that it's going to, because I was never working out or going to gym. Now that I pay somebody for a personal trainer, I had free membership for a gym for 6 years because I teach as a yoga teacher. Never do I go. Never, never, never. Now that I pay a personal trainer, I now go to my free membership of the gym because I now feel more inspired. So it's just finding little things that can help you kickstart your journey. One big thing, which we're not going to have too much time to get into because I'm already running over time, but is co-regulation. So feeling safe and connected to the people around you. Now, we think that just because people are family and friends that we've known forever, that we feel safe around them. Now, I'm not saying that, you don't feel physically safe. You might feel physically safe around people, but emotional and mental safety is a very big thing, especially when it comes to your nervous system. If you don't feel emotionally safe to be vulnerable with the people around you, your nervous system is not going to feel safe and regulated. Just going to go with that and leave it there. So breath work, another huge one. I do breathing exercises all the time to help regulate my nervous system when it feels out of balance. Grounding, so this can be done literally, you could be yoga poses, this could be grounding physically into the earth with your feet. It could just be doing things that that don't make you really anxious. So for me, drinking decaf keeps me more grounded. If I drink caffeine, I'm not going to be grounded. I'm going to be very scattered. I'm going to be very jittery. So doing things that make you feel and stay grounded. And the last one, which I have a whole module on, mindful boundaries, which I'm huge on because they will keep you safe. The boundaries are what's going to keep your nervous system safe. So these are just three questions or three resistance answers that some people hear, well, how do I know if I'm dysregulated? Like maybe I'm regulated and I think I'm dysregulated, or vice versa. So this is why mindfulness is so important. So you can learn and understand when your body is regulated and when your body is dysregulated, and what you can do that's most powerful to you to regulate your nervous system. Some things that you can journal about or start to notice is answer the following question. I feel uncomfortable or unsafe when, and write the answers down. And, nobody has to see these things. It could be very personal, but you need to start to get to know yourself, and very intimately. I would say that's probably going to be the biggest factor when it comes to your nervous system, is getting to know yourself very intimately. Same thing, ask yourself when you feel comfortable and safe. Pay attention, journal about it, talk about it with people. Know that everybody's experiences are different. Don't expect your experience to be the same for others. Know that you are your best guru. Nobody can tell you what works for you. Nobody can tell you that you're dysregulated or regulated. You know yourself best, and trust that your internal wisdom is much smarter than anything around you. Spend more time with yourself, alone if you can. The nervous system regulated myth. So I kind of went over it before, but the myth is that being regulated means you feel relaxed all the time, or regulated means just relaxed. That's not true. Or never feeling stress. But the reality is, the better you get at self-regulation, the less often and less intensely you'll get triggered, and your nervous system will be able to bounce back more quickly and can recover faster. So you'll get less often and less intensely triggered. That again goes back to your perception. So when you work on your perceptions and you learn to understand how your mind works, you will start to understand how to look at things differently, and then you'll be less triggered, and then it's all a cycle, So life is not meant to be stress-free, but we can learn how to regulate the nervous system. If you want to change your regulation, you might need to start changing the company that you have around, your relationship to stress, and your environment. And another big thing is making regulation a value and a priority. So as I said before, regulated means to move up and down the ladder more easily, more quickly. It won't work for me, and I don't have enough time. I can't add this to the list, Katie. Well, learning something new is always uncomfortable, and it takes time. You don't have to set time aside to practice mindfulness. You can't heal a triggered unless you're re-triggered. Now, I know I'm on 8 o'clock now, so I'm just going to quickly wrap this up. It'll probably be another 2 or 3 minutes. But this is one hard truth that I think we forget about when it comes to healing and learning about ourselves, is that in order to heal something, we usually have to get re-triggered. We have to re-experience it so that we know that we will respond differently. So most of us think that, oh, we're fine because the situation doesn't come up anymore. Maybe that person is no longer in our lives. Maybe we're no longer at that job. Maybe, you know, our finances are in a little bit different situation. Maybe our kids are grown up. Like, there's so many different situations where we feel that, oh, I must be okay because I'm not getting triggered anymore, where really that trigger has just not come up again. It hasn't been maybe the right environment. So know that like triggers are okay. And I want you to almost embrace them because they help you learn. And the most empowering thing from a trigger is to see it happen and then you actually respond differently. So look at it as triggers, I say, as divine assignments. You know, life is our classroom and everybody and everything is our teacher. So the lifelong practice that never ends, but always know that you have a choice in every situation. You always have free will. Now, my mindful method to daily, I would say, daily regulation are these 4 things. Number 1, releasing stress. So this could be meditation, it could be practicing mindfulness, but it could also be something physical. So I have a list here on how to calm your overreactive nervous system or how to release stress. So there's a whole lot of things you can do here, but everybody is going to be very different. And so you have to find what works for you. For me, recently, I've been picking up the ice baths, which some of you already know. And it is massively helping with regulating my nervous system and also my circulation with my body temperature. It's insane. I'm just feeling way more clear, way more grounded. But again, you have to find what works for you. The second step is creating safety. So you have to prioritize those relationships and environments that make you feel safe. Now, I know that there will definitely be people in situations where your nervous system doesn't feel safe, but you may have to be in those situations, whether it's a family member, a friend, or life itself. It could be work, but definitely we can create boundaries so that those people don't affect us as much, but we need to really pay attention to how our body responds to the world around us. So getting very clear and prioritizing those relationships, because you need to keep your nervous system safe in order to regulate it. Then you have to value the recovery or your self-regulation, because this is what I didn't realize, but my baseline became very dysregulated at a very young age. So my entire life, I just thought that a dysregulated state was normal and was actually like was good because that's where I felt safe. So when I started to do things, like I hated yoga, I hated being bored, you know, not now. I love, you know, I love yoga. I love doing nothing, shall I say. But that's because I felt uncomfortable when my body started to regulate because it was so different. And it was something I wasn't, I didn't know was a good thing, because dysregulated became my safety, became my baseline. So if we don't start to release our stress and create safe situations, we're going to have a baseline that's dysregulated, and we're going to start to feel that that's what's safe. So we definitely want to go back to number 1, release the stress, create the safety, really get to know your body. And then the last one is expanding your window of tolerance. So this is where we start to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. We start to have maybe difficult conversations. We start to put in those boundaries. We start to maybe change relationships. Maybe that means sometimes the relationships end. Maybe new relationships begin. But growth can only happen when you expand that window of tolerance and you start to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, and you kind of just keep going through those steps. Those are things I talked about before. And this is just some quotes from one of my favorite trauma expert guys on Instagram, Mastin Kipp. He also has a really good book. And I said this before, but the better you get at self-regulation, the less often and less intensely you will get triggered, and your nervous system will be able to bounce back more quickly and recover faster. This means you can focus your energy on achieving your goals instead of regulating your triggers. And this is another thing I wanted to add in. When it comes to somebody else's traumas or triggers, you didn't cause it, you can't cure it, and you cannot control it. understanding someone else's pain doesn't justify their behavior, but you have a better understanding and you can put boundaries in place. Now, I kind of ended with that because I think we tend to focus a little bit more on other people's traumas and triggers, and we stop paying attention to our own. So I really hope that you use your time getting to know yourself a little bit more so that you can understand yourself better and know that, you can't control and cure other people around you, but you can control and cure yours. So, that's it. If you want to get on my wait list, I will send that link through as well. I am going to send the, just going to expand this, send the link to everybody. If you have any questions, I know I flew through that, but definitely let me know. I'll stop sharing my screen. And yeah, well, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. And thanks so much for coming on. Bye.